Welcome, Minnesota sports fans, to another edition of Vikings SI right here on the Bring Me the Sports YouTube channel. Jonathan Harrison here, joined by most of our Bring Me the Sports team staff, Will Raggets, Tony Liebert, Joe Nelson. Boys, I have a question for you today. It's Wednesday now. Yesterday, the power rankings after week 1 came out. The Vikings, after looking through a number of different power rankings, averaged out to around 19 or 20th in the league. That led me to the question is, and I'll start off with Will here, are the Vikings really only the 19th or 20th best team in the NFL after everything we saw this weekend? Shouldn't they be a little bit higher? I know it was the Giants, so take the performance and what we saw for what it's worth, but 19th seems kind of low at this point.
Yeah, I think you can make that argument, certainly. I think the Vikings probably started, 24th, 25th in all the preseason power rankings. So they did make a jump after this week, and my guess would be, for the most part, that's these analysts who make these lists saying, I don't want to read too much into week 1. Let me make them prove it a little bit more. I think there's some fairness to that. With that said, I do think you look around the league, and the Vikings had one of the more impressive performances. Obviously the Saints just destroyed the Panthers. There were some other impressive games from some of the top teams in the league, the San Francisco 49ers against the Jets being one of them. But the Vikings on both sides of the ball, I think they made the Giants look like a team that didn't really belong in the NFL. I know the Giants are bad, but I don't know if people expected them to be quite that bad. This was supposed to be kind of a toss-up, a pick-em game at MetLife Stadium. So, yeah, the Vikings deserve some respect for that. I just think we've talked about it a lot. They have a lot of good things going on both sides of the ball. I don't know if I personally would suddenly say, the Vikings are the 12th best team in the league because they beat up on the Giants. But, yeah, let's see. If they're able to beat the 49ers this week, I think they should climb those lists even more.
Yeah, they're not 12th. They're somewhere between 7 and 10. That's a fact. Okay. Go. Let's go look at the standings, guys. And I'm not basing this on 1-0. I'm actually just thinking about what teams are actually better. Let's go division by division. AFC East: Dolphins, Patriots, Bills, and Jets. I'm comfortable saying one of those teams, probably the Dolphins or the Bills. I'm not going to give the Jets that honor just yet. Is better than Minnesota. Is that fair?
I might give both the Bills and Dolphins that, and maybe the Jets. We'll see.
Okay.
I personally would give all three of them. I think there's as bad as the Jets did look. I have a feeling might be the worst that we see from them all year. Having an old quarterback like that play week 1 off an Achilles, I think he'll only get more healthy. So that'll be an interesting one. You can make the argument that the Vikings are better than the Jets, though.
That Jets defense is really good. I think I would give it right now to the Dolphins and Bills for sure.
Yeah, but we just talked on our last video how the Vikings have a top 10 defense, right? They're legit, maybe a top 10 defense. So, if any of those teams are actually better than the Vikings, I don't think it's by much. I really don't. Especially if Sam Darnold, what we got against the Giants is closer to who he is than who he was the first 6 years of his career, which is entirely possible with this new roster. AFC North. The Ravens are better than the Vikings. I'm comfortable saying that, but I'm not going to give the Steelers, the Bengals, or even the Browns that honor just yet. Fair?
Fair.
I think that's fair, yeah.
Yeah, I agree with that. The Bengals are a team that probably will get better, but I agree it would be tough to say that they're much better than the Vikings after their week.
So did you guys see this? I know, Will, you wanted to touch on this, and I wrote a story about it on Vikings on SI earlier today, but the 49ers are 6-point favorites over the Vikings this weekend, and that's in Minneapolis. You know what? That's the same spread as the Bengals at the Chiefs, and the Bengals just lost to the Patriots at home, and they look like crap. So in what world is there a lens where you can look at the Vikings at home in their opener against the 49ers and the Bengals on the road against the healthy Mahomes-led Chiefs where they're equal underdogs? I can't believe that's an actual thing right now.
Yeah, I would just say it I don't know. I always tend to trust Vegas because I've just seen it so many times over the years where I'm like, that's a weird line, and then it ends up being pretty close. And there's a lot of money at stake there. They tend to know what they're doing when they're setting these things. I think it's really, yeah, if you weight the week one performances very heavily, then those spreads maybe don't make a lot of sense. It's just giving the Bengals the benefit of the doubt of being, Joe Burrow's shown some good things in the league. The Bengals have been a good team in the past, and the 49ers are perhaps the best team in the league. I think they have an argument to be one of the 2 or 3 teams in that conversation. So, yeah, would I say maybe I could see an argument for the Vikings being like 4-point home underdogs against the 49ers. I think you could say that. But I don't know. I also don't think 6 is a totally crazy line, just given how good the 49ers have been over the last few years.
Yeah, well, they haven't won in Minnesota since Steve Young was throwing passes to Jerry Rice and John Taylor, and Tom Rathman was their fullback. So it's been a minute. And they've had some good teams that have come into Minneapolis and tried to win. And Jordan Mason probably had his best game of the season in week one. Him replicating that over and over and over again is certainly possible, but unlikely. And if you don't have Christian McCaffrey, it's not exactly a cakewalk coming into US Bank Stadium.
Yeah,
I think you could put Mo Ibrahim out there in 49ers offense, and he would go get you 120 on the ground. Like Eli Mitchell, Jordan Mason. I mean,
yeah,
Kyle Shanahan just finds these like late round undrafted guys, and they can always seem to rack up yards.
That's what I was gonna say. Guys like Jeff Wilson, Matt Breida. It just when Christian McCaffrey wasn't there, it seemed like it was a different guy every week. So I could totally see Jordan Mason continuing to have games like that, and they like to use Deebo Samuel out of the backfield. So I don't think they're going to have any issue running the ball against just about any team in the NFL. So kind of what Will said too, the NFL tends to have the most accurate betting lines more than any other sport in the U.S. because it's probably the most bet on sport. So questioning those is a little interesting from time to time, but I could totally see a 1.5 point shift in either direction, honestly, with this game. Any NFL team at home being that big of an underdog, though, will raise your eyes a little bit. But the 49ers are a good team, and it'll clearly be a tough game for the Vikings if McCaffrey's playing or not.
I think I saw that a lot of the early money has already come in on the 49ers as 6-point favorites on the road. And I think that's probably just people. The 49ers are a big national brand. They were in the Super Bowl last year. They just put together a very impressive 2-score win over the Jets in week one. And I think maybe not a ton of people in the country were watching that Vikings-Giants game. It was a noon game, one of like a bunch of games on Fox at the time. You're probably only really watching it if you got a bunch of screens on, unless you're a fan of one of the teams. So we'll see. I think the Vikings still need to prove it to more people, and specifically the Sam Darnold thing. They want to see that more and more, especially against a 49ers defense that is just loaded at all 3 levels compared to the Giants.
How much are we, I guess, I know, Will, you've been kind of cautious to hop on the bandwagon. Joe's all in on the bandwagon so far from what we've gathered. Yeah, Joe is driving the bus on this one. How much are we weighing the fact that week one tends to have some more unpredictable scorelines? Like we saw the Bengals lose to the Patriots unexpectedly. Some other scorelines were a little unpredictable as well. How much does that kind of weigh against, I guess, where you feel where the Vikings are at this point?
Yeah, it's part of the discussion. You see some strange things happen time to time in week one. I don't think that the Giants. I think the Giants are quite bad. I don't think that is going to be a fluky result for them. And I think the Vikings are legitimately. I think 6.5 wins being their total going into the season. I've said all along that, not gambling advice, I would have taken the over on that, because it's just a belief in Kevin O'Connell as an offensive coach, in Brian Flores as a defensive coach, in the totality of the roster that's been building for a few years and was really upgraded in some spots this offseason. And I've said it all along. It all comes down to Darnold. And he looked really good in week 1, but he also, I would say he didn't have to do a ton. There was the deep ball to Jefferson. But there were a few plays where, he ripped it to a pretty open Josh Oliver on a seam ball, and he found an open Jordan Addison a few times. He dumped it off Aaron Jones or Ty Chandler a couple times. This week gets a lot harder for Darnold and for the Vikings going against Fred Warner and Charvarius Ward and Nick Bosa, and they might get Hufanga back. Like this is going to be tough, and I think it's gonna be a lot of fun to watch.
Who? Hufanga. That's who. So it's I know that was pretty bad. It's political season, so let me throw these at you guys. Whether you'll endorse these week 1 sightings, okay? Minnesota's 2 tackles. Let's start with an easy one. Christian Darrisaw and Brian O'Neill. Do you endorse that performance as something you can expect to see all season long as they're healthy?
I think it was impressive because the Giants have a solid pass rush. Kayvon Thibodeau and Brian Burns are both quality ends rushing the passer. So Darrisaw and O'Neill have shown it before, and they showed it against one of the best duos in the league.
So I think Christian Darrisaw is maybe the best tackle in football, and there's some real competition for that with Trent Williams and Penei Sewell, Lane Johnson, Tristan Wirfs, all those kind of guys. But Darrisaw is as good as any of those guys. Yeah. I mean, he reminds me of a lot of Trent Williams, who he's kind of taken some mentorship from over the years. And the way that he stonewalled Brian Burns and then just totally took Kayvon Thibodeau out of that game. I mean, it was dominant against a guy who had like 11 and a half sacks last year. Out of everything that's going to happen in this game on Sunday, every time the 49ers defense is on the field, I'm going to be looking to see if 71 and 97 Nick Bosa are lined up across from each other, because that is best on best right there.
Yeah, it's kind of scary because you get that great performance against the Giants from your tackles, and then another guy that I can ask if you endorse as what we saw in week 1 is kind of fact or fiction or somewhere in between is left guard Blake Brandel, who is amazing, had the second highest PFF score for a guard in the NFL in week number 1. But when you get Leonard Floyd and Nick Bosa, that's a level up even from Burns and Thibodeau. And then we talked about this too. It's the interior with Fred Warner on that second level and Javon Hargrave in the middle of that defensive line for San Francisco. It's no joke. And Ed Ingram had some problems. The way I put it, you have good to great in 3 positions on that offensive line with Darrisaw, Brandel, based on the performance so far, and O'Neill. And then you've got meh to bad. And meh is Garrett Bradbury, and bad is Ed Ingram.
Well, how about the tackles? You come out of the gates with Burns and Thibodeau. Now you got Bosa and Floyd. Oh, next week after that, Danielle Hunter and Will Anderson are coming.
Yeah, that might be the worst. Yeah.
They might be better. I mean, I think I'd still go Bosa and Floyd for now, but it's close. So it's the Vikings really ask their tackles, because of how much they trust them, to stay on an island. They put those guys one-on-one. They don't chip with tight ends a lot. Maybe they'll do that a bit with Bosa just because he's Defensive Player of the Year caliber. But it's gonna come down to, again, the interior, and I'm cautiously optimistic that Blake Brandel's going to have a solid season for the Vikings at a guard position where the bar for Vikings fans to be excited about is pretty low. But yeah, Malik Collins, Javon Hargrave, the Niners have some dudes in the middle, so Bradbury and Ingram got to get their act together quickly.
Is Ingram on a 3-week leash here until basically Dalton Reisner comes back? Because we heard throughout training camp, instead of him practicing at the left guard spot, it was mainly him at the right guard spot. And from what we saw in week 1 for Ingram, it wasn't great. The Giants picked on him, lining up Dexter Lawrence over him time and time again. Are the Vikings just waiting for Dalton Reisner to come back and then he'll slot in place of Ingram, and this is it for Ingram?
It's entirely possible. I think Ingram's got, like you said, 3 weeks, maybe more. It all depends on Dalton Reisner's back. I don't know if that's he's for sure ready to go.
Yeah.
Week 5, maybe after the bye. So maybe Ingram's got 4 more games to state his case to keep that job. But he hasn't done enough the first 2 years to say that that's, oh yeah, he's keeping that all year. Like there's a real chance Dalton Reisner takes over that job in week 7 or even week 5 if Ingram continues to struggle.
Well, there's nobody else on the roster who you can really put in that right guard spot right now and feel comfortable with it. I mean, was it Michael Juergens was the only backup guard in week number 1 on the active roster, and then you've got Tyrese Robinson on the practice squad, and then Walter Rouse, who everybody loves at tackle, and Kevin O'Connell has said he's got some guard potential, but he doesn't want to throw him into that fire and a position change right away in his career. You really have nobody right now. So if you have problems, you're going to continue to have problems until Reisner, your only option, is available to play. And back things, we've seen it with Garrett Bradbury. I mean, you just don't know. I mean, that could rear its ugly head in a heartbeat, and all of a sudden, Ingram is just, no matter what, he's your de facto right guard as long as he's got 2 legs that work.
Yeah, and with offensive line play, if there's only one weak link and if Ingram's the only issue, it's a lot easier for an offense to scheme around that and add packages with the running back helping on pass protection and stuff like that. So as you guys mentioned, there's not many options they have there, but if it's just one issue on the offensive line, I think that's something they'll be able to get around.
The problem is I agree with that. Like, if Bradbury can be solid and Ingram's just the one weak link, you can help a little bit. But if your one weak link is really, really bad, there's only so much you can do.
Yeah.
And that can really kind of blow up. I mean, I think of it sometimes as a weak link unit, where if you have one guy who just can't block the guy in front of him, I mean, that can mess everything up with just the timing of basic run plays and basic dropbacks.
Well, if you're a defensive coordinator, you're just like, let's send one extra on that side of the field, and then somebody's going to have a choice to make once that blitzing linebacker or the defensive lineman beats Ed Ingram. Because, is Brian O'Neill going to slide out and get the blitzing corner? Is he going to get the linebacker who's coming off the edge? Is the running back going to stay in, and you're going to have to pack it in and lose all your options in the passing game, and then rely on guys to beat corners one-on-one or find open spots in a zone? It's a massive advantage for a defensive coordinator if he just knows that 7 or 8 out of 10 plays, that right guard's going to get tossed backwards into a collapsing pocket. So it's a critical position that the Vikings haven't fixed in what feels like since David Dixon was playing right guard back in like 2002. So it's been a long time coming. There's no answer yet, and we just have to deal with it.
Joe, I want to do something quick since you're our optimist here. Let's talk about the NFC. I'm going to name an NFC team, and you tell me if they're better or worse than the Vikings. All right?
Yep.
Well, let's start with the 49ers.
Yes, they're better than the Vikings, but not this week.
All right. How about the Philadelphia Eagles?
Yes, 14 wins I got them on this season.
Okay. Dallas Cowboys?
Yes, they are better at this point.
Okay. Detroit Lions?
Yes, they are better.
Okay, so we got 4. Now I'm wondering if we're going to get.
I think you've
run. How about the Green Bay Packers with Jordan Love healthy?
With Jordan Love healthy, I think it's a toss-up. Without him, obviously not.
Okay.
We've started a little back and forth with some of the other NFC North on SI writers, and they were sending some power rankings in an email, and everybody was going Lions 1, Vikings 2, Packers 3, Bears 4. Nobody buys the Bears. The Packers have taken a step back, and I think it has more to do with Jordan Love than anything else. But they are catching some wind of this sweet-smelling Minnesota Vikings team. So I will say Vikings right now, and in the long run, I think the Vikings could be better too.
Okay, and I think I know the answer to this, but how about the New Orleans Saints?
No, they're not. That's a mythical victory over the worst team in football. Derek Carr's Derek Carr. I don't have to say much more than that. I like a lot of their offensive weapons, but no.
All right, last one would be Baker Mayfield and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers.
I think they're close. I think they're a very good team, very dangerous team. They came into Minnesota in the opener last year and won, which maybe that has something to do with San Francisco being a 6-point favorite this week. Minnesota didn't win their home opener last year. I don't know. but they're
I think
good.
they're like 3-7 in their last 10 home games. The Vikings. It's been bad.
I mean, they had a little rough stretch there, but I do not think the Bucks are better than the Vikings on a neutral field.
What about the Rams?
Okay, so you got the Vikings. Oh yeah, the Rams is a good one.
They went toe-to-toe with the Lions, took them to overtime.
I think I completely forgot about that division.
They had a lot of injuries, though.
Yeah. The Rams are a playoff caliber team, but I think they fall just short in the NFC West and in the wild card. I think they beat the Vikings on Thursday night later this year because that's in their ballpark, so to speak, and that's on short rest for Minnesota, having to travel out west. That's not going to be easy. They're good. They're great with Matthew Stafford and Sean McVay, and they can play with everybody. But I think Minnesota's got a more talented roster.
Oh,
Seahawks could be decent too, but I
think they're a playoff
Vikings
team.
there.
I think the Seahawks are a playoff team. They did not look good in that first half on Sunday, but with Metcalf and Lockett and the Ohio
Kenneth
State
Walker.
Yep. I mean, they've got a lot of talent on both sides of the football, and with Mike McDonald coming in there as a defensive-minded head coach, they've got good young cornerbacks. They could be sneaky good this year.
Joe, why is the Saints win over the Panthers any different than the Vikings win?
Well, Daniel Jones is like two quarterbacks better than Bryce Young. Bryce Young is awful, and he has absolutely no help.
Yeah.
I saw somebody tweeted the Carolina Panthers ruined like four All-Pro quarterbacks' careers. They ruined Cam Newton. They ruined Sam Darnold, who's going to be an All-Pro this year, obviously. They ruined Baker Mayfield, and now they're ruining Bryce Young. It's like you just can't do anything right in Carolina. And I mean, they've had problems. They have, from the ownership all the way to the coaching and down. I mean, it's kind of a train wreck down there in Charlotte. And if New Orleans is going to score 40 or 45 points on that team, that's one thing. But if you go into New York, where they actually have like a respectable defense, and you win 28-6, that's another level of a victory, in my opinion.
That's fair.
I saw the stat that was like an advanced quarterback metric, where the top two guys in Week 1 were the 2022 Carolina Panthers quarterback room of Baker Mayfield and Sam Darnold. And it's like, how are Panthers fans supposed to feel about this? I mean,
you can't feel good about it. You cannot.
These two guys left, and then we traded the house to move up and get Bryce Young, who just – it's really panic hours, I think, for Bryce Young and Carolina.
Yeah, I don't know. The height thing was always the big talker with him coming out of Alabama, and there were some guys on the board who looked really good, like C.J. Stroud, and that might have been
Anthony Richardson too. Yeah,
massive. That throw by Richardson this week was unreal.
Oh
yeah.
That's the most ridiculous throw I think I've ever seen in my life. Just
barely
has his feet under him and just slings it 60 yards in the air. Just insane.
Yeah, I can't wait to
65 yards.
Later.
Yeah, ridiculous. Fun. Just drops it right in the bucket for a touchdown. Incredible.
Yeah, probably the best athlete in the NFL.
That's a hot take.
Yeah,
Tyreek Hill
up there.
He's got to be up there. Guy's a monster.
Danielle Hunter is up there.
A great athlete, yes.
Miles Garrett.
All right, so back to the original topic. If 19 is too low, where do we see them? Joe says 7 to 10 range. Will, where are you at?
I think I'd put the Vikings as, let's say, the 17th best team in the NFL right now. Just the very, very top of the bottom half of the league. And I could absolutely see myself jumping that up like 3, 4, 5, 6 spots if they win this game on Sunday, and talking about them as suddenly a very interesting team in the NFC. And even if they don't win this game on Sunday, to be clear, I'm unless they get blown out, which usually doesn't happen under Kevin O'Connell. If they lose by a touchdown like Vegas predicts, you still feel okay about that 2-week start if you're the Vikings. I think you look at these first 4 or 5 games and you're like, if you're 3-2, that'd be huge. If you're 2-3, I mean, you're surviving the gauntlet to some extent. So it would just be so huge if they could stack another win here and give themselves some margin for error. But yeah, that's a long-winded way of saying I'll go 17 right now.
Tony?
Yeah, as much as Joe's, I guess, homerism has been showing, I think it's honestly entirely realistic to think that they could be as high as 12 even this week. Because the top 10 might be a stretch, but when you're talking about the teams like the Chargers, the Jaguars, the Steelers, the Rams, the Saints, like you can make a real argument the Vikings are better than any of those teams right now. And I like Will said, if they have a good performance this week against the 49ers, do well against the Texans, that's, I think, only going to go up. And I think they've shown that they, at their best, can be a playoff team this year. I might not go as far as saying 12-5, but there is a lot to like from the Week 1 game, and I think based on what you've seen on the field, you can think they're a lot better than teams like the Bengals or Packers.
So then on to the second question that we broached a little bit there, 6.5 point line there, I believe, for the 49ers. Do we think the Vikings keep it closer than that, or is that about right? I know, Will, you tend to trust Vegas. Joe, where are you at with that?
No, it's hard to lose by 6 when you win by 7. So Vikings are certainly not going to have a problem with that.
Tony?
Yeah, I think they're a live underdog at home. I think Brock Purdy has notoriously not done well under pressure. Brian Flores likes to bring the heat, and a few plays bounce their way. I think they could be in this game. 6 points is a lot at home. So yeah, I think they'll be able to cover that number. I don't know if they'll be able to win though.
I have a feeling when I make my score prediction for our post this week that I'm going to be in a similar range that I was last week. I think I said 2017 Vikings over the Giants. I think I'm going to be low scoring again because the 49ers defense is really good, and I think Sam Darnold, that's going to present some problems, and no Jordan Addison. I'm a big Jalen Naylor believer, but you're talking about Justin Jefferson and Aaron Jones and then who else for the Vikings weapons. But at the same time, I'm really kind of all in on this Vikings defense, and I think they'll be able to do some good things. I don't think Jordan Mason's running for 150 yards when you've got Harrison Phillips and Ivan Pace and Blake Cashman and Josh Metellus flying around. So I think I can see the Vikings keeping this one close and covering if they don't win outright.
Will Stryker Reichard walk-off kick?
They might need him a little more this week than they did last week for sure.
Yeah, this is definitely kicker game. This has got some kicker game written all over it.
Oh, absolutely.
Jake Moody had 26 points for my fantasy team on Monday night for the 49ers. That was quite something.
Sounds like a red zone problem.
Yeah, true.
Yeah, absolutely. Boys, it's been fun. I know we got to get out of here. We got time constraints, so it's been fun. We'll talk to you tomorrow with another topic across Minnesota sports to discuss. Catch us right back here on the Bring Me the Sports YouTube channel. If you haven't already, click that subscribe button. It really does help us out. We'll talk to you tomorrow.